Good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Hey, thanks for joining me this morning. Grab a good cup of coffee and join me in Matthew chapter 5. We're back in the Sermon on the Mount today, where Jesus is really going to start meddling. Yes. As we get back to this passage of Scripture, he's again taking us not just to the external sin that causes so much problems in our lives. He's taking us to the motivation for those sins and saying that what you're doing in your heart is itself a sin which leads to the greater sins. We saw that yesterday just in the idea of if you hate your brother or sister and you're not resolving those things, those feelings will eventually lead to something else, but take care of it at the root cause, at the very base of the tree. Go to the feelings, the thoughts you're having in your heart. That's where the sin originates. Well, he's going to do this starting in verse 27 with adultery. Now listen carefully. We've got a great devotional to cover, some comments I want you to hear this morning from someone else. Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery.' But I tell you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. For it's better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it's better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." Now, is Jesus literally talking about physical mutilation here? No, he's using a simple matter of speech, one that we use all the time, hyperbole, to get a point across, to say, take this seriously. Take what seriously? The idea that sin begins in the heart. Now, there are a couple of passages that really continue to expound on this, quite a few in the New Testament, but I want you to just listen to some of those comments on this passage by others. The Barnes notes on the New Testament are some that have some very simple explanations, commentary on a passage, and they give us some background here that I think is important. It says that our Savior in these verses explains the seventh commandment, and it's probable that the Pharisees had explained this commandment as they had the sixth, as extending only to the external act, and that they regarded evil thoughts and a wanton imagination as of little consequence or as not forbidden by the law. Now, our Savior assures them that the commandment did not regard the external act merely, but the secrets of the heart and the movements of the eye. And he declares that they who indulge this wanton desire, that they who look on a woman to increase their lust, have already in the sight of God violated the commandment and committed adultery in the heart. Such was the guilt of David. If you go back and remember that story of him with Bathsheba, how did it start? It started with him gazing upon her, looking at her, and let those evil thoughts come up in his heart before he finally acted upon them. Well, what do you do in an age like ours where it seems like everybody is using the very thing Jesus is condemning? They're using it for nefarious reasons. I mean, to sell you everything. There's a great devotional in the Bible.org site by Gregory Brown, a guy that's been in ministry for years and is a retired Navy chaplain. I want you to listen to his discussion on this passage because I think he hits some things that are quite obvious to us. We just need to hear them again. He said, "Sexual immorality is a tremendous temptation in our society. It's the ultimate promotional advertisement. It's used to sell everything: colognes, cell phones, clothes, and other accessories. It's used to promote athletic events. It saturates our entertainment, including our TV, movies, and music. What makes the promotion of sex even more pervasive is the invention of the internet. In a few clicks, people can have access to pornography, which is one of the biggest industries now in the world. And statistics say that 70% of men ages 18 to 24 watch porn, and 1 out of 3 porn viewers are women. The average age for a child to first view porn is 11. these are shocking statistics to most of us, but it explains a lot about what's going on and what's wrong with our society. He goes on to say that the consumption of pornography is leading the march on the destruction of marriages and families. Statistics say that when men watch pornography in marriage, their divorce statistics double. And when women start watching pornography, their divorce statistics triple. That in itself ought to be enough of a reason to say, stay away from this junk, because it's going to wreck your marriage. You're just made that way. I mean, if you just surrender yourself to these evil thoughts, you're going to ultimately be carrying them out in person. He goes on to write, though the principles of this passage may apply to lust and sexual immorality generally, Christ's focus is on adultery. And he says that when a man looks at a woman lustfully, he's already committed adultery in his heart. Now, in Matthew 5:20, Christ began to address the need for a person's righteousness to surpass that of the Pharisees and the scribes to enter the kingdom of heaven. Remember, we've been working on that one for a couple of days now. Now, the rabbis of that day focused on externally keeping God's commands to the exclusion of heart motives. They taught that the focus, that to not murder was to keep the sixth commandment. It didn't matter what you thought in your heart about other people. But Christ taught us to be angry with a person was to murder them. Here the rabbis taught that to not commit physical adultery was to keep the seventh commandment. But Christ taught that lusting after a married person was to commit adultery before God. Now, obviously, to Christ, lust and adultery are not the same, nor do they deserve the same consequences. According to the law, the consequence for adultery was death. However, God hates not only the act of adultery, but also what leads up to it, the lustful eye and the lustful thought. Now, he goes on to say, as we consider this text on adultery, it teaches us how to avoid sexual temptation altogether. Because he says sexual temptation is destructive, therefore it must be avoided. In fact, Paul echoes this sentiment in 1 Corinthians 6:18, which says, flee sexual immorality. Don't play with it. Don't mess around with it. He says, flee, run. Get out of Dodge. Get away from it. He goes on to write, every sin a person commits is outside of the body, but the immoral person sins against his own body. It's a sin against our mind, body, and spirit. It binds, traps, wounds, and kills. It's so powerful, we are not called to fight or resist it. We're told to flee from it. And so, he's got a great study. I'd encourage you to check this one out on Bible.org about it. I can't cover all of that this morning, but I do want to just touch base on one more of his points. He said, when Christ says whoever looks at a woman to desire her has already committed adultery in his heart, he's not referring to an incidental or an involuntary glance. The Greek word here for looks is a present participle, which refers to a continuous gaze. He speaks about the person who gazes to satisfy his or her lustful desires, and it describes the person who might watch an X-rated movie for the purpose of satisfying his lust, or a person who repeatedly looks at another's figure to derive pleasure from it. And that's how the sin starts. It's what happened to King David. And friends, if you think that you can avoid the same consequences, you're playing with fire. Don't let it get started. What Jesus is trying to tell us is that if we begin with the very source, the initial thoughts that we allow into our mind, we play with those, and we try to enjoy that which is forbidden by vicariously enjoying it in others. And that's what happens when you watch pornography or movies and other things that just envelop you in the lives of other people in these kind of lifestyles. You say, no, now I couldn't live that way, but I can really enjoy other people doing that. Then that's the start of the poison. that will take your heart down that long, desperate road toward committing evil sins that you never thought you would commit, all because you took the first step. Well, folks, let's instead step toward the Lord each and every day and keep the purity of the heart in mind, especially to preserve our marriages and our families. Well, that's a good word for today. You have a great rest of your day in the Lord, and guard your heart, my friends. It's the source of life. We'll see you again right here tomorrow as we wake up in God's Word.